You are now entering a dangerous liberty zone where God-given natural rights are held sacred and exercised. This is your warning. Tyranny, fascism, and censorship will not be tolerated. Ideas will be exchanged freely. Rigorous debate and open discourse is encouraged. If you are weak and your beliefs are fragile, you should leave now. Prepare yourself. We are now live on the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. All right, folks. Happy Wednesday out there, everybody. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. We appreciate you tuning in to another awesome episode of the Dangerous Liberty Podcast. We have some great guests for you tonight. I'm really excited about this. Like, we could not have a better panel to cover exactly what we're going to be covering. But before we get into that, make sure you like, subscribe, and if you'd like to support this channel, down in the description below is a membership link. You can become a member. It's a couple of bucks a month. And also, I just want to tell you right now, our guests, we have all their social media down in the description below. Make sure you go follow them. But I do want to say hi to everybody over in the chat. We have Central Mass Blasting. We got Ash in DJ23, Melissa Walker, Cyan KQ, Obscure Moderator. Big shout out to all the moderators that help make this channel sane over in the comments. But we appreciate all of you. We got a bunch of new members that just signed up. Thank you very much. But we were getting into something, folks. I'll be honest with you. I've been sitting over there pretty much all day reading through the manifesto of the San Diego Islamic Center shooters. And it is heavy, heavy stuff. It is heartbreaking to say the least. These kids had a future ahead of them, fairly intelligent, and they identified some real problems with society. But unfortunately, they came to the worst possible conclusions. And we're seeing this extremely pervasive in our society, especially this woke ideology, woke right ideology, this anti-Semitic ideology, and it is brain rot to its core. But without further ado, I want to go ahead and bring on our guests. We have Amy Reichert and we have Keri Smith. Ladies, thank you so much for coming on. I can't wait to talk to you and not only just break this down, but one of the things I thought was so important with you, Keri, bringing you on is hopefully giving people the information, the tools to prevent this from happening with their kids. Before we get too heavy into this, Amy, if you will, just take a moment for people that don't know who you are, introduce yourself, and then I'll have Keri introduce herself, and we'll take it from there.
I'm a state licensed private investigator in California. I've had my license since 1999. Started doing investigative journalism a few years back. I'm also the founder of Reopen San Diego. So we were able to successfully save cops and firefighters' jobs in federal court. So I basically have stepped into the arena and telling the stories that legacy media won't touch. So thank you for having me.
No, thank you for being here. We appreciate you so much. Keri.
Thank you for having me. I'm the host of Deprogram with Keri Smith. I am just a layman who talks about cult deprogramming. I was in the woke leftist cult for about 20 years before I started leaving that. And I think it's the biggest religion, the biggest religious cult operating in the West. And then I write and talk a lot about this emerging woke right, what's being called woke right, which has elements of anti-Semitism and elements of this red pill manosphere and cell culture. And what's interesting is I hear from a lot of parents who have lost children to the woke left ideology, the ideology I was in. And in the past year, I've started hearing from parents whose kids are getting pulled the other way into this, what's being called the woke right sphere. And so I have a feeling you're going to start to hear from a lot more parents who have these concerns.
No, I couldn't agree with you more. I think, unfortunately, we had Charlie Kirk that really did have this, not only a religious, but a cultural revival amongst our youth. And it suddenly was cool to be conservative again.
Yes.
And now what we have is almost a lot of that being undone by the Nick Fuentes and some of these other folks out there that are very, they have a message that is very attractive to the youth, and they sell it by some of these tropes, some of this anti-Semitic nonsense, trying to convince people that Israel and Jews are the problems for the entire world. And it is not only objectively wrong, but it really does cause a lot of issues. And it comes down to, it's easy to come to some really bad conclusions of how to fix society when your brain is stuck in that gear. So real quick, I just want to clear up a couple of things yesterday. We started reporting on this yesterday, and there was a lot of new information coming out, and I want to make sure that I set the record straight. There was a couple of things that was reported that I got wrong that I gave to you. Number one, and Amy, you feel free to correct me, there is no indication at this point that either one of these were actually trans. Is that correct, Amy?
The manifesto specifically goes into a section called tranny and fags. That's not my words, that's theirs.
Yeah.
And they go into great detail saying that they will probably be accused of being trans or gay, but they are not. And there's an entire other section where they go into how they hate women, and they're basically incels.
Yeah. And we're gonna go through at least some of that. I don't know how far we'll get into the manifesto. We'll see where the conversation goes. And as always, folks, we are going to include you in the conversation. We'll take your questions. We'll read your comments. We will prioritize the super chats, but we will hold that off toward the end. A couple of things that people need to realize right now, and I have been trying to get down the timeline of this, and I'm going to just share my screen real quick and show you a couple of things that took place. And I'm going to go through the timeline, and then I'm kind of just going to let Amy take over for a little bit and talk us through what she knows from local law enforcement, and I'll let her also reveal some additional information that she got from sources close to the shooters as well. But I want to share this screen so we can see what's happening here, and I'm going to also give you guys a timeline. But the big picture of this is we actually have there we go. All right, so we have the Islamic Center right over here. So this is the Islamic Center. This is where the shooting took place. There's a video going around where you can see them shooting through a window. And I assumed at the time, because not a lot of information was out, that they were basically right near the Islamic Center. They pull up. They're basically doing like this drive-by. But when I went down here to the street view, I couldn't match up that video footage with the landscape at all. And so I immediately figured out that that is not the right location where that took place. Strangely enough, after they had killed 3 people over here, they decided to go right over here. And this is where the second shooting took place. And their car is faced in this direction, and they're shooting at what we now know is a landscaper at one of these houses. I'm not sure if it's quite this house or this house. It's kind of hard to tell from the Blair Witch footage. And then from there, they end up moving right around the 3800 block of Hatton Street. And this is where they take their lives. So that is kind of the short of it. And I will also give you the timeline on this real quick, and then I'm going to turn this over to Amy and she can fill us in on the rest. But the Islamic Center San Diego shooting, a lot of new details have emerged. Join us at 7 p.m. 9:42 a.m. San Diego Police Department received a call from a mother reporting a runaway juvenile. She says her son may be suicidal, her vehicle is missing, and several weapons are missing. Late morning, before 11:43 p.m., police began trying to locate the vehicle. The suspect's license plate reader information reportedly places the vehicle near Fashion Valley. The officers also focused on Madison High School because one suspect had connections there. 11:43, police received an active shooter call at the Islamic Center of San Diego at the 7,000 block of Ekstrom Avenue. Officers were already nearby, leave the mother, and rush to the Islamic Center. By 11:47 a.m., officers arrive within 4 minutes. They find 3 adult male victims deceased outside in front of the Islamic Center, including the security guard. Officers immediately enter the mosque and adjacent school using active shooter protocol. Around the same time, shortly after, the police begin receiving calls about more active gunfire a couple blocks away. Chief Wall identified this as the 7100 block of Salerno Street, where a landscaper was shot at but reportedly not hit. 11:52 a.m. Times of San Diego reports the second 911 call came in. A caller said someone in a vehicle in Salerno Street had opened fire on the landscaper. Moments later, officers are called to 3800 block of Hatton Street, where they find a vehicle stopped in the middle of the street with two suspected shooters dead inside. Police believe they died from self-inflicted gunshot wounds. And we know that's true. Well, one of them was not self-inflicted, but we know that's true because it's on video. And that video is available on X. At 1:55, they hold the first news conference. One thing that you brought up, Amy, that I'm curious, because I've seen bits and pieces of what I've come to understand is the Discord stream. There's folks, they're streaming this entire thing the whole time. And there's no sound in any of the video that I've had, but it looks like they're actually talking to viewers as they're doing this as well. Amy, do you have any information that entire stream with audio is available anywhere? Have you seen that?
No, I'm pretty sure law enforcement has that right now. The FBI is involved, and we may have access to it in the future, but honestly, I don't think we will. I think they'll bury it.
I don't disagree with you. So, we've kind of got the big picture of the events and the timeline. I don't know, start filling in the gaps for us. If you want to, you shared a story with me earlier. I don't know if you want to go into that, wherever you want to take it.
Well, let me just start off by saying I'm very pro-police. Again, my organization, Reopen San Diego, supported the police against the COVID mandates. But I will say that the police chief, Scott Wall, what he said at the news conference was a little bit different than the cop sources that I had. And I was able to independently verify through 3 different law enforcement sources, quite honestly, a timeline and story that was a little bit different than the police chief of San Diego. Namely, one of the things that the police chief did not mention was that the mom, who did call San Diego police for help when she realized her vehicle was gone, the family's guns were gone. She knew her son was dressed in camo, had left a note saying that he was going to shoot up a place. And she did call. She either called 911 or the non-emergency line. I don't know. We'll find out later why that might be important. But here's what police sources told me. She was put on hold for 90 minutes.
Wow.
90 minutes.
Wow.
And these police officers, they're very frustrated because the fact of the matter is, it's the Northern Division Station that responded to the shooting at the Islamic Center in San Diego. And they were understaffed that day by 7 officers. We've had enormous budget cuts, cuts to overtime. They're about 150 police officers short. And I don't want to get political or anything, but many of them feel that they have been driven out by the defund the police rhetoric.
Well, we have no problems getting political on this channel, so you
good.
however you want.
Okay, I'm a little political. Good. Let's go. Okay, so stay on.
If we find an area where we disagree politically, like, we can hash that out some other way, but we want open discourse on this, and I think people need to know the truth with all this, and we are still seeing the effects of defund the police. This is something that the Democrats pushed, the leftists pushed. They wanted to take police off the streets, and we saw the effects of that, and that was crime went through the roof, and we're finally starting to see where crime is coming back down. But crime would be, our neighborhoods would be safer, the response times would be much lower, lives could have been potentially saved had they had the right people, the right amount of people on the job, and the experience. And that's the other thing that people don't understand too, is like, when you just start firing officers and you cut budgets all over the place, it's not just the manpower that you're losing, but you're losing real experience. And that has extremely deleterious effects on how well the police can respond and how professionally they can react to what's going on. So the mother was on hold for 90 minutes. Now, just playing a little devil's advocate, are they putting people into motion during this time? Like, do you know what's happening during that 90 minutes?
No, they were not putting people into motion during that time. When she was finally able to get through, there were some different resources that were used, like license plate readers. And then through the most bizarre of coincidences, I actually met the mom over a year ago. And we'll go into that later. But long story short, one of the last conversations I had with her a year ago, and she was the mom of Kane Clark. She said, "Hey, my truck was stolen out of our driveway. And I want to sue the dealership because we paid for GPS to be installed, but it was never activated." So she did have GPS in one of her vehicles. And I'm asking the question, was there GPS in the BMW that was used in the shootings? And did the police have access to it?
Well, that's a great question. I'll tell you, I'm a little torn on that, though. I don't know that I want people tracking me, but in these types of situations, it's one of those trying to find the balance between security and privacy, and it's one of those challenges that we always have.
They never found them. By the way, they never found the shooters. The reason why San Diego police were able to be there 4 minutes after the shooting started was because they were 2 minutes away at the mom's house of Kane Clark. So they were there investigating, talking to her. They got the call that there was a shooting at the Islamic Center. So they were merely just 2 minutes away. And at least one squad car was able to respond and be on the scene within 4 minutes of when the shooting began.
It's super unfortunate. Now, getting into a little bit of the manifesto, and Keri, I want to bring you in here and talk a little bit about, you've had a chance to at least skim through the manifesto. There is a clear, as you indicated, we're seeing this growing trend of anti-Semitism being popularized, politicized. What was your overall thoughts about what you read there?
Well, first of all, I want to say the first I heard of the shooting was through some friends who are on the left. I still have a lot of friends on the left on Facebook. I feel like X is sort of a echo chamber, but on Facebook, you can still get a cross section of the public. And so I see all different kinds of people's news feeds. And some of my friends on the left were sharing about it, and they were talking about it just in terms of Islamophobia. And so without knowing anything about it, it was just sort of about, Islamophobia is on the increase. Then when I skimmed through the manifesto, I think it was page 4, the very beginning, all caps, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews, it's the Jews. So they do have different sections, as Amy points out, with all of the different identity groups they have grievances with. But out of all of them, they want to make sure you, the reader, knows that it's the Jews are the ones they have the biggest grievance with. And they continue to underline that even as they go after other groups. They lay out that women are their second the second worst group. A couple things that strike me immediately. One is, as I mentioned, and as you've talked about, like this ideology has been, people have started to call it woke right, and I still get people asking. I get leftists, criticizing the phrase woke at all, and then I get people who are in this woke right ideology who criticize the phrase woke right, or they'll ask you to define it. And my definition is pretty much the same as it is with woke left. It's a belief system that says the best way to look at the world is through this grievance-based identity group ideology, where you look at the world as like a struggle for power between competing identity groups. And they believe, whether we're talking about the leftist flavor or the flavor that presents as being on the right, they believe that there are certain groups that are oppressors and other identity groups that are oppressed, and that we need to take power away from some identity groups and give it to other groups, and then we'll reach utopia. Like that, like the solution is to redistribute power based on identity. And so it doesn't matter to me very much if you are of the leftist persuasion and you put, they make white people the scapegoat, they make men the scapegoat, they make straight people the scapegoat, and they make Jews the scapegoat.
And blacks.
but people on the right do it for blacks, and they do it for Jews, and they do it for and they do it for women. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, it doesn't matter. They're just, the difference is which groups you're putting at the top of your hierarchy and which ones you're putting at the bottom, right? And so if you scroll through this, it's a lot of the identity group grievance stuff. It's like, Jews are the reason for all the problems of the world, and women this, women are the second worst. And it's a lot of black and white thinking, which the left tends to do. It's a lot of, I think psychiatrists would call it splitting, which is that sort of, you're reducing everything to binary. Like, women are wholly entirely good, or they're wholly entirely bad, right? Or Jews as a group are wholly entirely good, or Jews as a group are wholly entirely bad. Like, that's the way these shooters are thinking, is they are reducing entire people groups to good or bad. So those are some initial thoughts. I can go from there into whatever
I want to hit a couple of excerpts here that kind of give everybody an idea. And by the way, folks, if you want this, I'll drop a link down in the chat where you can go download this entire thing. I will tell you, it's heavy reading, folks. I don't get emotional, but I'll tell you, this is very sad to sit there and watch this. You have a fairly intelligent kid, and you know the ending of the story. And he's identifying some real social problems.
Yes.
But he ends up coming to the worst solutions possible, and really the dumbest solutions possible, because this is where this leads. And then on top of that, he's getting ready to willingly throw his life away for nothing. But I want to read this top one. He basically says, I see all this stuff going on. He says, I take this saying from a film. I see all this stuff going on, and I don't see anyone doing anything about it, and it pisses me off. And that came from American History X. That was the film that he was quoting. And then the second quote from a film, he says, even if my life is worthless, then a speck of dirt, I want to use it for good of society. That comes from a Japanese film, Imuzu. And then he says, I then found other fighters like Patrick Crucius, Anders Bremen, Dylan Roof, and John Ernest. These are both mass shooters. All of them are mass shooters and conform to racist ideology. These men fought for me and had the same goals I did. It was there I asked myself, why don't I do something? And again, I have some notes here that apparently on this, while I kind of got it up in the browser, they won't pull up, but that's where we start. And of course, the universal enemy, it's the Jews. All of them can be traced back to be or be caused by one group, the Jews. It's the Jews. The Jews across all of time have been behind an extremely disproportionate amount of the world's problems, whether it be from war, famine, exploitation of children, rise in degeneracy, infighting of people, political killings, the separation of family, the departure from the church, the white race replacement, mass immigration, the central banking systems, and so on. It's always been and always will be the Jews. There is no moderate option to this problem. They'll always rise back to power, do the same again, wherever you exile them to. For any sane man seeing all of this, the only logical solution would be just to end them all. We'll leave it at that. But like, this is so objectively incorrect and demonstrably incorrect. Every place that it's humans. Every time that we've had a society, we've had degenerates, we've had the worst among us, we've had corruption, we've had murder, exploitation, with or without the Jews. And no doubt that being humans, they have experienced that as well. But it's just such low IQ nonsense to reduce it down to this. What's your thoughts on that, Keri or Amy?
Yes. I think Amy's might be having tech problems. I noticed her drop out. I think that there's always, so you mentioned there are some grievances in here that are real problems, and I agree. And there are also, it's mixed in with a lot of poison, with a lot of things that are false, and a lot of hatred, and a lot of toxic just slop. And this is the way that cult leaders throughout history, this is the way that mass killers have pushed their evil ideology throughout history. This is always the way it's done. They will take bits of truth and they will marry that truth to a lie, to sell the lie. And so when you, the reader, read something like this or any shooter's manifesto, I mean, a lot of people reference the Unabomber's manifesto as being someone who recognized a lot of real problems about the breakdown of society, but he had the wrong solutions and he married a lot of truth to a lie. These guys reference the Unabomber as one of their influences. And much like him and much like the New Zealand, the Christchurch shooter, they are marrying some actual problem like degeneracy. And I would agree with the shooter. Degeneracy is a problem in our culture. Families are breaking down. Marriages are falling apart. We are not valuing the right things. But what they've done is, I believe by reading this, you can hear, if you're familiar with any of some of the most popular woke right podcasters today, I think you can hear some of their voice and some of their words in this manifesto. And I think these young men were listening to a lot of very toxic influencers, most likely, who were taking those bits of truth and then saying, and here is the solution, and presenting these evil conclusions from it that are not reasonable conclusions to draw. So, for example, they talk about degeneracy in society, and they talk about, one of them, I think it was Caleb, how he's short and he can't get a date and women won't give him the time of day. And they go into a lot of the incel culture stuff. And instead of saying, I'm going to stand up straight, like Jordan Peterson talked about, with my shoulders back, and I'm going to apply myself, and I'm going to pursue virtue, and a virtuous person will then come into my life, right? Instead of taking life like a man and deciding to walk with your shoulders back, he instead goes into this resentful posturing, which is, I am going to blame all of my problems on the Jew and women, and I'm going to assume that all women are like this, and I will never find a virtuous woman, that the virtuous woman does not exist, and I am going to abandon pursuing virtue at all myself, and I'm going to take a coward's way out and pump all of my resentment and my unrealized potential into ending other people's lives and then my own. Like, and that's just like, it's the biggest loser, cowardly way out. You're not even trying. You're not even trying to actually do anything about the culture of degeneracy that you claim to be upset about. And so this also reminds me of Columbine, with the kind of the resentment, the resentment at the very nature of being itself. And I know Peterson has talked about that as well, but this kind of nihilism that some people fall into, where they look around and they decide, not only do they hate themselves, and not only do they hate other people, but they hate God and they hate existence itself. And these guys express this throughout their manifesto. They talk about wanting to burn everything down. They want to destroy everything. That's nihilism. They want to destroy everything, and then what? Supposedly we get to start all over and build a utopia. That's so they can still imagine themselves as the good guy while they're doing something evil. They're like, I'm going to destroy everything and everyone, because then we're going to get to, after I'm gone, I'll be a hero and we'll rebuild everything and it'll be beautiful and wonderful. That's
whether
lie.
we're talking about Antifa or we're talking about the woke right or some of 76409A white supremacy group, whatever it is, like what they all have in common. And really, we're seeing a political movement, and that's kind of like what the woke right are actually saying, is like, we just need to make it so bad that we apply accelerationism to where we can build something back better. And it doesn't work that way. It doesn't, like, allowing, if you take it from what's going on politically right now, they're basically saying Donald Trump and MAGA aren't doing a good enough job. What we need to do is, when we voted for Donald Trump because the Biden administration was weaponizing the DOJ against us, they had open borders, we were flooding our country with, they had sex and human trafficking going nuts, we had opioid deaths through the roof. And even though that Trump has addressed most of that and is continuing to address most of that, it's not good enough. So what we need to do is we need to get them out of office. We need to get the Democrats back in, finish off destroying the country, and then hopefully we can rise back up. But one of the the statements in this manifesto that really struck me. It says another group that has a lot of control of the world events in comparison to their lower numbers, similar to the Jews, are the Freemasons. I will not lie. I don't know that all that much about them. And would love to learn and find out more, because there is certainly something going on there that requires some attention. So this tells you that they've just been told this. Like, again, these are just talking points. This is, psyops and information that people are putting out. Like, hey, also the Jews are bad, but by the way, the Freemasons are just as bad, I guess. And like, how? Like, explain that to me. What are they doing? How are they controlling the world? I just recently found out that they've been added to the suspects of killing Charlie Kirk. But here he says, I don't even know anything about them, but I think they're responsible for the problems that I apparently am facing.
Yeah, that sounds like a Candace Owens listener to me. I'm not making a joke. It really does. Because she's someone who drops things like that all the time as if she's a big reader. She's not. And she'll drop things like, and the Freemasons. And that just sounds to me like someone who's picked that up casually by consuming podcasts. And we were just lucky that he happened to spell it out for us, as if we couldn't tell that he doesn't know very much. But, I don't know a lot about it. I'd like to learn more, but I know for sure. I don't know, but I know, right?
That's exactly right. And Amy, you jump in here anytime you got something to opine on. The very next thing after the Jew, only second to the Jew, the most evil creature in this world is the woman. This is because after Jews, women tend to cause all the problems in the world. I don't know where they rank compared to Freemasons, but they're up there. They do this in the way similar to centrist, just blatant sheep-minded people, in the way that they are complacent, easy to sway, while still having far more control than they should. And he goes on and he talks about height difference I deserve, height difference I deserve. You deserve nothing. Being short, especially now more than ever, is nothing short but torturous humiliation ritual. Short guy ego. Goes on, he calls women's foids, which is a term, I had to look that up, dehumanizing term for female, like a female android robot. I mean, it's just sad that people would adopt this as their worldview.
It's also where he talks about women being sheep and easy to sway. Again, I think he's just consumed a lot of podcasts and other people's ideas. I don't think these are anything that he's thought very deeply about. Unlike some of the other mass shooters that he idolizes. I actually don't think his manifesto is well written. I think the grammar is terrible. If I were, I just had to judge a bunch of senior thesis projects, and this one would be getting an F from me because it's just the grammar and stuff. As smart as he thinks he is, and as much as he goes on about IQ, I'm like, this one is not well written. Like the New Zealand one was at least well written. But in it, he talks about he's throwing out other people's ideas, right? About women being easily influenceable, and I agree with that. That's something I talk about quite a bit, is that women, especially there's a verse in 2 Timothy about in the end times, women, the types of influencers almost, right? The types who will creep into houses and convince women of bad ideologies, and keep them asking questions, but never arriving at the truth. 2 Timothy talks about this, people who will be con artists, and how women are somewhat gullible. Yes. What he's missing is that he's also somewhat gullible. It's just there are going to be different types of messages that would appeal to a young man like himself who's demoralized and growing up in a culture that's telling him he's toxic, and all the stuff that woke left culture is telling him. And so you get a lot of these young men who are just as sheep-like, who are just as easy to sway, but it has to take a different form. And so what form is it taking? It's the seductive siren call of Nick Fuentes. It's the seductive siren call of, it's the same thing that the young women on the left are getting. It's just slightly massaged to where, hey, guess what? Your identity group is the special identity group that's oppressed. And if you just follow me like the Pied Piper down off this cliff into resentment, but it's the same operating manual for how to persuade gullible people to follow something to their own demise, to their own demise and to destruction and to actual murder of other people. And so that's what I think. This is a guy who's just he's just as malleable and he's just as easy to manipulate as the women he's criticizing, as the young women he's criticizing.
Yeah, and just so we're clear, Nick Fuentes is mentioned in this. He says, "My name is Caleb Vasquez. At the time of this writing, I'm 18 years old. Will possibly remain this age forever. Only you know. I'm half Spanish and some French and half Northern Mexican, which would make me 70 to 85% of European genetic descent. I don't. Yeah, okay. Knowing how many of you see Nick Fuentes, you'll probably just see me as a LARPing spick, but that's honestly fine, and I could care less. Couldn't care less. I hate that when people don't use that correctly. Yes, I had some mental issues, which I'm sure will come out eventually, so I won't waste any time talking about it here. But again, we do have, he's clearly, consuming some Nick Fuentes content. I am certainly not left-wing, nor am I right-wing, especially not with MAGA or Trump. Politically, I call myself third positionist, specifically aligning most with the nationalist socialism and eco-fascism through any third positionism, especially those that prioritizes people, nationalism, racial homogeneity, and nature, traditional ideas, is one I agree with and would follow. What was I religiously doesn't matter. Really, at the end of the day, as a friend once said, my religion is the white race.
Yeah.
Which is pretty wild to, and speaking of which, Amy, I want to bring you in here and talk a little bit about your experience, going back a year ago, where you actually talked to, I think we lost your video. Amy, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me okay?
I can. Yep.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So last April 2025, I received a message through my Instagram, and it was from a mother who said that her son was being forced to take an ethnic studies class, and it was mandatory for him to graduate. In California, by 2030, all schools, it's mandatory that they have to take an ethnic studies class. This is San Diego, so the school district is San Diego Unified. They mandated it for graduation. So this young man, Kane Clark, he was in Madison High School, but he was in the online program. So he was taking classes online, and the online course was ethnic studies. And he was a couple weeks into it. And again, they've sent me screenshots over a year ago about the curriculum. Happy to share those with you, Gary, if you'd like to blast them out. But
Sure.
it truly is a radical ideology that he was being taught, that whiteness is bad. And so I asked if I could interview him, and I granted them anonymity. In fact, I didn't even ask the mother's name, but she was texting me back and forth the answers from her son. And I did share it publicly. And what this young man said, Kane Clark, was that, and this is the mom saying this, the mom was identifying him as mixed race. She was not identifying him as white. She was white, but she said they had family members that were Indonesian.
And just so everyone understands, at the time, you didn't know their names or anything else. You were just talking to this.
I didn't know their names. I always protect my sources. In fact, I'm not even going to mention the parents' names here.
Sure.
And so the boy wound up telling his mom and then communicating back to me was he felt the curriculum that was being taught to him about whiteness was making him turn against his own white family. Isn't that interesting? And the other comment he made was he felt like the way that they were teaching about minorities was making him feel less than because of his mixed race status. You see, whenever we have a tragedy like this, we always want to go, oh, well, were the shooters Republican or Democrat?
Sure.
And there's so many layers here. So when the shooting happened, I remembered that I had spoken to a mom who had a child who went to Madison High School online and who, by the way, was a wrestler. So I reached out to the mother and I said, can you please let me know if this is one of your son's friends? And it was genuine. I wasn't thinking that I had literally spoken with the shooter's mother last year. I didn't hear back, which was very unlike her. She was a super fast responder. And by the way, everybody wants to blame the parents. This was a good mom. I don't know what happened in their home, but I had phone conversations, multiple ones with this woman. She didn't sound mentally ill. She certainly wasn't on the extreme as far as political beliefs. She genuinely was concerned because her son was mixed race, that the school was teaching him things that were making him feel less than, and that's his words, not mine.
So,
And so
this is a great point, real quick, Amy, that I want to interject here. That, this was a mom that was actively involved in her child's life. And Caleb, as I understand, he was homeschooling, right? This is the child that was homeschooling, or he was not homeschooling at the time?
Kane Clark, he's the one that the mom that I spoke with, he was online
Got
at
it.
Madison High School. Caleb was a student at Chula Vista High Tech High, which is a charter school. And I get multiple complaints about the woke curriculum there. They have way more leeway at these charter schools. I've received reports, numerous, in messages from people who knew of him, and they say that he was actually kicked out of school last year for making a threat. So I don't know if Caleb was attending school or if he was being homeschooled or if he was online, but for sure, Kane Clark, the Madison High School student, he was in online learning. And
but Kane, his mother's actively involved in his life. This isn't like some, degenerate mother that's just, raising some latchkey kid. This is someone that is, concerned about their child, that are active, homeschooling him. I don't know why that came about, but typically, we homeschool my oldest son. It's because the local high schools are terrible, and I don't want him influenced by some of the trash. And we have, like, compared to California, here in West Virginia, it's a rural area, fairly conservative, but even still, like, there's just bad influences that I don't want my son exposed to. And my point is, like, it's easy for us, like you're saying, it's easy for us to start judging the parents because we think that, oh, it can't happen to us. And, I think
that's
it
what we
can.
do. It's
Yeah.
a defense mechanism. And I have received also the parents immediately deleted their social media, and people sent me screenshots of the father's social media. And by all accounts, the father appeared involved in his life. He was not only a wrestler, but before that, he was also in jujitsu. And somebody else sent me another message. Actually, two separate people sent me a message saying that the jujitsu studio where Kane Clark had trained, the forgive me, that the coach that is in charge of the jujitsu studio, I know that there's an actual name for him. There were accusations, shall we say, against him, and he was removed from his teaching role. Again, these are accusations and allegations.
Sure.
So there's a lot going on. In the Facebook photos that were sent to me, it looks like the dad was a DJ of some sort, maybe into like the heavy metal scene. There are several pictures of Kane wearing a baseball hat that says 666 on it. I think those hats are sold now at Fashion Valley, which is one of the malls here in San Diego. But it was just very interesting.
Keri, talk a little bit about that, because I know you deal with a lot of kids and families that of people that have been sucked into cults, and what you do is study these things, understanding how these people are indoctrinated, and even coming from the cult woke left yourself, you understand how these things work. And that's what people think. They're like, not my kid. That ain't gonna happen here because I did whatever I was supposed to do. Talk a little bit about that, because I don't think
Well,
that's correct.
the first thing that comes to mind for me is just how different this was, or how different the world is now than when I was indoctrinated into what is now known as the woke left. Um, I went to Duke University in the late 90s. That's where I started learning about white privilege, toxic masculinity, all the things that came after, like white fragility and all the different lexicon that Amy's also talking about, what the kids are now learning in K through 12, which used to be just at the university level. You started to learn this belief system. And so I wasn't getting it online, and I wasn't getting it in K through 12. I didn't get it in K through 12 the way these young people are. And so today, raising kids, I think it's even more difficult because it's in their schools a lot of the times, unless you've chosen your school very well. Like it's in the schools. It's also it's online,
Even in Chri-
and
even in Christian schools and universities,
yes,
crazy how prevalent this actually is.
it is. And here's the thing about the online world. As Amy said, a lot of these parents, they're good parents. They have good intentions. It could be, we like to think it couldn't be us. However, we've grown up in a time where these devices have now become ubiquitous. People carry around phones. They're online all of the time. Young people have, most people just gave these. I'm not blaming parents. I'm just saying we sort of, as a culture, gave these to children without really understanding what the consequences might be, not just on an adult brain, but on a developing brain. And so now we're starting to see research. We're starting to see the consequences of this, and kids who've been left to their own devices online, like the murder of Charlie Kirk. I mean, he was online at 9 or 10 years old, and so when these kids are online and they're interacting in forums and with adults and with groomers, people who want to groom them ideologically and sometimes sexually, you're kind of putting them out into the great unknown and just saying, like, figure it out. And like I said, we're starting to get some research back. There's a neuroscientist, a doctor that I would recommend people check out. His name is Dr. Horvath, and he has testified before Congress about how they're starting to look at the brain scans of children who have had a lot of access to screens and those who haven't. And what they're finding is that the more time a child spends in front of a screen, the less white matter they have in their brain, which is sort of, it's the part that connects all the different parts of the brain. And so it leads to, they're having cognitive difficulty. They have language difficulty, problems with critical thinking and reasoning. And so there has been kind of a push now that we're seeing some of these consequences where parents are saying, you know what, I want to raise my kids offline. like I want to wait until my child is 16 or 18 before they get a device. And when you say stuff like that now, I have found some people find that to be like, they think that's extreme or radical or something, or how could you possibly do that in this world? But I know parents who are doing it. I know parents who have made that choice and who are raising their kids without devices, who are homeschooling their kids or sending their kids to private Christian schools that they have vetted very closely, and who have a community who, I think you almost have to go and find a community to put around your kids. Like, you have to put a lot of thought into it. Who's going to be the role model in my kid's life? Like, real life role model, so that they're not out looking for role models online. Like, they're not looking for Nick Fuentes or Andrew Tate, because they've got real strong male role models in their life, right? And I know parents who are doing this and who are proving that you can do it. It's hard. I'm not saying it's easy, but they're doing it, and their kids have better test scores. Their kids have better social skills. Like I said, I just watched a bunch of seniors in a homeschool program get up and defend dissertations they had written, like a whole thesis paper, and defended against counter arguments. And a lot of, it's hard for me to imagine public school kids being able to do stuff like this. So I know I kind of went off on a tangent there
Oh,
about what you could do instead, but yeah, I think the internet, I think kids having access to all manner of things online is a big contributing factor that we didn't even have when I was coming up.
well, and I think another problem because we see kids that are growing up in, devout Christian homes, for instance, and then they go off to college, and like within a semester or two, they have gone off the rails. Whether it's drugs, whether it's alcohol, whether it's some sort of ideology, and it's like, man, how did that happen? These kids grew up in a good home, and one of the things that, as I was thinking about this, the problem that we have as parents is we think that our kids are going to learn through proxy. And, for instance, it's like I'm big on Second Amendment, I'm big on Christian conservative values, all of these things. But I've come to that determination mostly more strongly in my adult life because I've actually researched this and I have some sort of foundation that I build those beliefs on. And I think a lot of the times what happens is we think these kids are like, you know what, I'm conservative, I believe in the Second Amendment, I've said a little bit about that, my kid's going to pick up on that. And all we've told them is the what without telling them the why. And this is one thing I've talked about for years. Like, you've got to indoctrinate your kids, because if you're not indoctrinating them, somebody else is.
Yes.
And
Yes.
making sure that they understand the foundation of your belief and why you've come to that conclusion, and not just tell them the conclusion. I can tell my kids, look, guys, it's really important that we defend the Second Amendment. Okay, Dad, great. Yeah, I like to shoot. We own guns. Then they get into college, because in college and in schools, they will indoctrinate them. They will give them a foundational belief as to why the Second Amendment, religion, whatever it is. They will give an entire dissertation and a compelling argument that they have no answer to. And this is how they indoctrinate them. They will give them the information they need to support that argument, but we provide the argument with no support. And then we wonder why we lost our kids to an ideology that was explained better and more compelling than our argument that we never made.
Yes, and they will give them a religion. Like, they will give them something that explains, like you said, a whole worldview. If you don't, somebody else will map it out for them. And this manifesto is a worldview.
It really is.
It's one that you can find cobbling together different, woke right influencers.
No, 100%. Amy, jump in on there anytime.
Well, to your point about, when you tell parents that you don't want to give your child a phone, or they're not playing video games yet. I have an older son and I have a younger son. I have an older son who did video games from the very beginning. And I saw later on that was not the best for him. And so for my younger son, he didn't play his first video game until he was 11 years old. And when you tell people that, the problem is people feel judged.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it is. It's kind of like you're at a party and somebody offers you a beer and you're like, no, thank you. And they're like, oh, were you one of those? You're judging them. It's like, and the person goes, no, I'm an alcoholic. 20 years recovered. I gotta say, it was the same for me. I did see the damage that it did to my older son. We went a different direction with my younger son, but that was the kind of reaction that I got from other parents, like I was judging them, and that was not the case.
Yeah, no, I agree. One of the other things that they talk about in this manifesto, or Caleb talks about in this manifesto, he's talking about Jews, but then he kind of starts blending a bunch of different information regarding Blacks, African Americans, and Jews. And he talks about rap and rappers themselves are pushed by Jewish media to incentivize and normalize the thug culture and vulgar showings of women by singing disgusting and violent topics, which then becomes the Black youth idols. It also, of course, doesn't help that fathers are almost never present and the cycle never seems to end. And this is just one of many spots where he's identifying a real problem. But again, the driving evil behind this is the Jews. And this is just media and Hollywood culture, period. I don't care if you're white, you're Christian. We've seen like normal people, whether they're actors or performers, musicians, whatever, go into this environment completely normal. And the next thing you know, they're the absolute weirdest, leftist, crazy people that we've ever seen. And so this is not about a race. This is not about a religion or anything else. This is the fact that degeneracy sells. And the note I made over here is that media in Hollywood operating within a secular and profit-driven culture. Basically, what I'm saying is, like, the worse it is, the more sensational it is. I don't care if we're talking about rap music, we're talking about movies. Like, they are getting worse and worse and worse. And the more popular it is, being popular is almost always an indicator of how immoral it is, right?
Mhm.
And at the end of this, I say it's spiritual warfare defined. And that's what it is. Like, the ways of this world, the evil in the world, is always going to be more attractive than living a life that's productive, that is dedicated to God, that is dedicated to principles. And that's what we're missing in this. And it has nothing to do with the Jews. If we didn't have a single Jew, I mean, do people really think that? Like, if, let's say we didn't have a single Jew in the country, you don't think Hollywood would still exist? You don't think
Yeah.
degeneracy, porn, drug addiction, all of these, do you not think that this would still exist? Because there's people of every spectrum involved in that activity all over the world, by the way. Like, in other countries where there are no Jews, we still have similar versions of Hollywood in similar levels of degeneracy. But for some reason, it's the Jew. I mean, it's just.
I can actually speak to this
Yeah.
in a very interesting angle. So I'm a Christian. I became a believer. I accepted Christ right before my 36th birthday. But part of my Christian testimony is that I was raised Jewish. I
Oh,
had a
wow.
bat mitzvah, went to Hebrew school, the whole 9 yards, right? And so when I share my Christian testimony, I always share about my Jewish upbringing. And I get the most hateful, vile, anti-Semitic attacks. I did so on X. I have 75,000 followers on X. I have nearly 100,000 followers on Instagram. And I talked about this demonic hatred of the Jews. And yes, I believe Candace Owen is demonically possessed or oppressed or something when she talks about Jews. And I said it's spiritual. It's spiritual because we read in the book of Revelation that it is the remnant, right? The Jews that will accept Jesus as Messiah in the end days. I hope people don't mind that I'm getting a little spiritual here,
Nope.
but I pointed that out and I got attack after attack after attack about Israel, Israel, Israel. I never even mentioned Israel in my post. And so I do. I believe that when you look at this manifesto, these boys literally believed that nobody has agency in the world, including them, except for the Jews.
Yep. It's a lie. And it's funny because they, first of all, praise God. I'm glad you're talking about God because this is my belief. I'm a Christian and it is the lens through which I view everything. So I know
Same.
to a non-believer, and I was like the last person I ever thought would become a Christian. I know what myself as a non-believer would be thinking is like, oh, so cringe or cheesy, right, to talk about Jesus. But I actually believe like that is the answer to, like Charlie Kirk. I believe that is the answer to what ails people who turn to nihilism or turn to darkness like this or turn to murder. And Charlie Kirk talked about anti-Semitism and other forms of hatred being from the pit of hell. And he talked
Yes.
about that for a reason. And he lived his beliefs. The more I've gone back and listened to his lectures at colleges, he talked about politics and policy. Yes, he was very interested in politics and policy and making a difference and influencing the policy and decisions that he thought would be best for our world. But primarily, he talked about Jesus and he talked about the family. And he talked about it all of the time. And he also lived it. It wasn't just some line or some grift or some costume that he wore. He was one of the few like sincere people who was actually like in his daily life putting these things into practice. And I just, we lost a great online, I was talking about real life role models before. We lost a great online role model for a lot of young men who looked up to him,
Yes.
who had never met him, through another act of evil by someone who had succumbed to this nihilism, this resentment, this darkness that's out there that's trying to get you, you know? And I also think of Jordan Peterson, because even though Jordan Peterson, I don't know if he's accepted Jesus as his Lord and Savior, he's been ill for quite a while. So we've but he was leading people there. He's part of my path back to God. He was part of my eventually finding Jesus was through Jordan Peterson's lectures about the Bible. And he's another one that he's still with us, but we haven't heard from him in quite a while. And I think that a lot of these demoralized young men, that a lot, as we mentioned, they have some of their grievances are absolutely correct. They are growing up in a world that is telling them that masculinity is toxic and that white people are the root of all evil and a lot of stuff you talked about. And so I wish they were turning to people like Peterson or Charlie Kirk if they didn't have real strong Christian role models in their life. I wish they were turning to those people instead of to mass killers and looking for answers from mass murderers. Just some thoughts about some positive role models who are out there for young men.
Yeah. And speaking of which, I want to go and play this because this is Charlie Kirk speaking to that very thing.
Thank you.
Charlie, and I had a quick question about anti-Semitism online. Another question here they asked about Candace Owens, and I'm a big fan of you. I was a big fan of her, but she's obviously been going down this anti-Semitic bent. And through her, I'm kind of finding out about these other characters online, like Nick, for instance. I'm sure you've heard of him. And these people, they've been active for a long time, and it seems like they've just been ignored, which is working, but now they're kind of surging in popularity. And as someone who I enjoy watching your debates, are they people you'd be willing to engage with and maybe shut them down in a way through a debate or something like that?
Well, I mean, I'm going to debate Candace. But no, look, I'll debate anybody that shows up at our campus events first and foremost. But I do want to take what you say and extrapolate that there is a corner of the internet of people that want to point and blame the Jews for all their problems. Everybody, this is demonic and it's from the pit of hell. It should not be tolerated. Period. The problem of this entire generation they're depressed, they're anxious, they're staring at their screens all day long, and if all of a sudden your extrapolation of all that is, well, it's the Jews' fault, that is sloppy and shallow thinking. And not only that, they say, oh, it's the Jews' fault. Okay, let's kind of play this out. Well, tuberculosis, that used to kill about 1 billion people. It's a group of Jewish scientists that came up with the antibiotic that cured tuberculosis. How about CPR, the MRI machine? There's over 500 million lives that were saved over the last 50 years because of people that were Jewish scientists that were working on things. They'll never say thank you to the Jews, but they'll always say shame on the Jews. It's weird how that works. And finally, they always blame the Jews for stuff. Jewish people are an ethnicity. So therefore, definitionally, you have people that are secular, orthodox, religious, that are all over the spectrum. You're trying to blame an entire ethnicity for a singular problem. Hold on, let's take a step back here. Instead of that, what could you possibly do in your own personal life to improve your own state of being? If you are blaming 0.02% of the world's population for all of your problems, that is not going to be good for your soul. It's not good for your psychology. It's not good for your future in any way, shape, or form. And so I would just say this, that any young person that goes into this hyper online brain rot, you are serving yourself over to your own demise. You are serving yourself into a suicide mission that will not make you happier and not make you healthier. Instead, here's what your attitude should be. Your attitude should be like, I can't own stuff. I got it, can't own a home, not getting married, I don't know who to date. Said, wow, the challenges are immense. I'm going to now overcome all those challenges and go on an adventure. I'm going to prove everyone wrong. I'm now not going to be a victim. I'm going to be a victor. I'm going to dig deep. This is still a great country.
Yeah.
This is a free country. I'm going to use my agency. I'm going to use my ability. And I'm not just going to go point in the corner and be like, I'm overweight because of the Jews. Women don't want to date me because of the Jews. How about this? As Jordan Peterson would say, sit up straight with your shoulders back, follow the rules for life, make yourself interesting, learn something new every single day, and instead of pointing at a small group of people and engaging in this brain rot, become a better person. You'll be a happier and healthier, more joyful and productive person.
So there it is.
Yeah.
A voice of reason in a time of madness, even after we lost them. And the other thing that I've always said about this, I don't care what color you are, I don't care what challenges you face. We're in the United States, and you still have more opportunity than any other place and any other time on the face of this planet. And no matter how bad it is, that whatever your circumstances are, there are people that have far less ability, far less gifts that God has given them, far worse circumstances, and they are hugely successful. And you could do that too. But the difference between you and them is they're going to sit around and focus on the negative. These people are looking for opportunities. They're looking for the positive things. They're looking for ways to overcome the adversity that they're facing. And that's why, like, it's crazy. That's why so many people want to come to this country. They're in abject poverty. And the next thing you know, they get in here, whether legally or illegally. And the next thing you know, they are living a successful life because they see opportunities where you see problems. And it's just backwards. It's silly. We still live in the greatest country that has ever existed. And if you want to sit around and complain, fine, but you're gonna live a complainer's life. That's what's gonna happen.
I'm so glad you played that clip because I've thought about this a lot since Charlie Kirk's assassination. The spiritual temperature, if you will, after he died, after he was murdered, there were people that were messaging me. I know you've probably had the same experience. They were like, Amy, what church do you go to? I've never been to church, or I haven't been to church in 20 years, or I too come from a Jewish background. I want to go to your church. And I'm like, okay, come with me. I'll be there at 9:30 on Sunday. And I heard from people that I went to high school with, that I graduated high school with, and they were sending me pictures of them getting baptized, and they kept saying it was because of Charlie.
Yep.
So here's what the woke right did. They hijacked what God was doing by reaching more people with Charlie dying. And instead of pointing people to Jesus, and every single one of these woke right podcasters claim to be Christians, right? They're not pointing people to Jesus. They just keep saying the Jews, the Jews, the Jews.
No.
Yeah.
No, you're 100% right. Go ahead.
And
Keri.
well, you're so right. There was a revival feeling. The memorial service alone was like one big revival. And
My mom watched the service. She's Jewish.
People were, like you said, everyone has those stories of people contacting them, going to church for the first time, buying their first Bible. I have several friends who just came to Christ since Charlie, like you said, since Charlie was assassinated, and people who had quit going to church who started going again. And I think the devil was mad. I think that's why, like you said, this all of a sudden from the place we would least expect it. Like I expected the evil from the left and them celebrating his assassination, but then to see people who claim to be on the right, it was like, oh, the devil, he doesn't have any new tactics. He's just going to sell it from a new angle. He's like coming over here and selling it from over here, you know? And so they all started going, let's refocus everything on hating Charlie's widow and his life's work and his pastors and his church and his organization and the Jews and Israel, and all of this has just been, 8 months of this insanity to try and detract from what the Lord was doing. That's how I view it. But I think, that his message is still, that's the answer today. Go to a church. I have friends who, when they first come to Christ, they're like me, like, trying to get it. They're calling everybody they can, like, what should I read? Where should I go? Things like that. And I'm like, you will have people tell you that it's not important to go and worship with a body of people. Like they will tell you, oh, you can just do it online, or you can just watch sermons online. And that's true. If you don't have a strong church, you can just watch sermons online, but you're missing out. Like you're robbing yourself of something. And if you have kids, you're robbing them of that community of people who can support them. Like if you find a good church community of Bible believing Christians and strong role models for your kids, like community members for your kids who will hold you to account and hold the like my church, I know they will hold me. We hold each other to account. So that you're missing out on that if you don't have that kind of family, if you don't have that community.
Yeah, and having them to fall back on where they're not only do they hold you account, but they encourage you. And
yes,
I will tell you, getting busy and when I miss church on Sunday, like my whole week is different. My whole outlook is different. Like I am noticeably more prone to the flesh. Next thing you know, I'm cursing more. I'm reacting to things more. I'm doing things that I'm like, all right, like we got to get our butt to church. We got to dial this back because retard Gary is coming out, and now door kicking Gary is coming out, and like I got to dial that back, and we need to approach things from a godly perspective. And I see that myself. And folks, look, I'm not perfect, but I'll tell you, you gotta check your flesh from time to time. And especially when you're getting angry on X is the worst. Sometimes
no, Instagram is the worst.
For the ladies, is that right, Amy?
Instagram. I get X. Yes, X is. I actually agree with Keri that it's more of an echo chamber on X. Instagram. In the past 6 months, in particular, I haven't heard the phrase "the Jews killed Jesus" directed at me, who's someone who is. I'm not even a Messianic Jew. I'm a Christian. I'm a Christ follower. Period. End of story. I believe the Bible is true. But when I share how I was once Jewish and then became Christian, which is also the same path as Paul the Apostle.
Yes.
Right? And all the apostles.
I get the Jews killed Jesus. And I'm like, I haven't heard that since a kid came running up to me on a playground when I was in 2nd grade. And he pointed his finger at me and he said, the Jews killed Jesus. You killed Jesus. And I started crying. I'm like, I didn't kill Jesus. I was just like a little Jewish kid, 8 years old. I didn't know what he was talking about. Long story short, I became a believer. I worked at a church and I was in ministry for 10 years. I actually got my MDiv, my master's in divinity, in seminary. But here's what every Bible believing Christian knows. It isn't just the Jews that killed Jesus. We all killed Jesus.
Yes.
The Romans were in on it too, the Gentiles. And he gave his life willingly for us. It was never in God's plan that Jesus was going to live to be 99 years old, and then for believers in him to be wearing necklaces with little walkers on it. Okay?
Yeah.
So, I just had to bring that up. The Jews killed Jesus, people. They really bug me.
I thank you for saying that. I've also heard that online, and somebody, I forget who it was, so I can't give them credit, but somebody said, if you read the Bible and the message you took from it was the Jews killed Jesus instead of I killed Jesus, then you didn't get the central message of the Bible. There's the verse, I had to look it up so I didn't get it wrong, in Corinthians, and such were some of you. And such were some of you, like there, but for the grace of God go I, that kind of mentality. Like you're not saved because of your works. You're saved I'm saved because of God's grace. Like I'm not some, because I'm not Jewish, I'm not a sinner, and I don't deserve hell. It's just it's an unchristian message to come away from the Bible with that. And a lot of these, for any parents who are looking at the stuff their kids are listening to, Charlie Kirk fielded a question it wasn't that long before he was murdered. There was a question on his show from a mom who called in. I don't know if you guys have seen the clip, but she was asking him about some of these woke right podcasters, and she mentioned Fuentes and who are some of the others. And I'll just say for parents, if you're looking at what your kids are listening to, like Amy said, a lot of the ones who are masquerading as being on the right are also masquerading as Christian.
Yes.
But everything they're preaching is the opposite of the gospel. It's an inversion of the gospel. They're just putting a Christian label on it. And one of the big ones is Stone Choir podcast. Those guys claim to be a Christian podcast, and everything they say stuff like Black people aren't human. They don't deserve to be able to have any rights or to vote or to be American. They'll never be American. Things like this that are coming out of their mouths. And then, the stuff about the Jews as well. It's basically the manifesto. It's basically a bunch of the stuff that's in the manifesto. And so be very wary of anything that's slapping that, anything that puts that Christian label on to try and sell a bit of poison, with that label, like a snake oil salesman. Just because it's got that Christian label on it does not mean that what's inside is Christian. And the Bible is full of references. Jesus spent so much time telling us how to use discernment and how to judge people by their fruits, by their behaviors, not just by like what they say they are, but how they actually live in the world, how they behave in the world. So,
well, I mean, we even see that with a direct example of Jesus Christ himself. I mean, Satan himself came to Jesus. We know the temptation of Christ. Satan himself was quoting scripture to attempt to deceive Jesus. So even Satan quotes scripture. That doesn't make you a Christian. And you can take scripture all the time, twist it around, and turn it into something for satanic causes. You really can. And just pure evil. They can justify almost anything. It just like you talked about, Keri, the context is what matters. Understanding and being open to the correct interpretation of the Bible is really important. And what that takes is you need spiritual leaders. You need a pastor. And that's why that, Jesus Christ himself set up the church in the way that he did. He had disciples that he talked to directly. He had spiritual leaders. He had them meeting in congregations. All of this stuff is important. And what the devil wants you to believe is like, none of that stuff's important. He knows you will wither, you will die, and you will fall out of grace because of these things that people are like, oh, you don't really have to go to church. Going to church is super important. And I do understand that people that can't for one reason or another, or haven't found a good church. I've been in that boat myself. But it's not an excuse. Like those things are laid out in the Bible for a reason, and people need to understand that. One thing I did want to go back, Keri, because I thought it was really important. I looked up 2 Timothy that you were talking about. And
there's so much good stuff there, and 1 Timothy. Yeah.
And let me remove that. Remove from studio. Right there.
Amy, I'm very happy to get to meet you tonight, by the way.
Me too.
Oh, I'm glad to meet you guys too.
Oh, this is awesome. All right. 2 Timothy 3, 6-7, warning about vulnerable women. They are the kind who worm their way into homes and gain control over gullible women, weak women, vulnerable women, silly women in older translations, who are loaded down with sins, are swayed by all kinds of evil desires, always learning, but never able to come to a knowledge of the truth. So, man, if that doesn't describe what's going on with the Candace cult and many others, I don't know what is. They have a lot of information they can share with you. None of it is correct. None of it's true. And it's deceptive at its core. But I think
can I read you piggyback on that with really quickly with from 1 Timothy 3, and it's so interesting because this was from my pastor's sermon this week. It just happened to be he was in Timothy. As I urged you when I went into Macedonia, this is 1 Timothy 3, 1 Timothy 1, verse 3. As I urged you when I went into Macedonia, stay there in Ephesus so that you may command certain people not to teach false doctrines any longer or to devote themselves to myths and endless genealogies. Such things promote controversial speculations rather than advancing God's work, which is by faith. The goal of this command is love, which comes from a pure heart and a good conscience and a sincere faith. Some have departed from these and have turned to meaningless talk They
Mhm.
want to be teachers of the law, but they do not know what they are even talking about or what they so confidently affirm.
Wow.
A resounding gong.
That's powerful. All right,
Yeah.
let's hit some questions, some super chats, and then we'll see where it takes us from there. But Positive Tiffany, thank you for becoming a member. Pyre P58, thank you for becoming a member. Colton, C. Souter, thank you all. Domsey, thank you very much. Domsey gifted 10 Paramount Tactical memberships. You're the best, Domsey. We appreciate you so much. Save Smiles. I used to live in San Diego and never saw that Islamic Center. I've only seen the Mormon Cathedral.
Let her know that that's it's in Claremont, and it's right off of the 805,
Okay.
off of the Balboa,
Awesome.
right in that area.
I'm still brokenhearted 6 years after my daughter disowned us for voting for Trump. Therapy helped.
Oh.
I still miss my baby girl. Thank you for covering.
Can I just
I'm
tell her
gonna pray
something?
about
I
that.
love that.
You know, I just share this with people. My aunt, I was lost to my Bible believing family, my aunt and my grandma for 20 years. My aunt prayed for me. She had a prayer closet I didn't even know about where she put my name in it and a list of prayers for me that she would add to all the time. She prayed for me for 20 years. And probably along the way, and actually has told me there were times where she thought I would never, that God was not listening to her, but God was listening to her.
Mhm.
And he has his own timing. And I don't say that to be doomer, like, oh, it's going to take 20 years. Who knows? I'm just saying we don't know the way God works and we don't know his timing.
Well, and you shared your story the last time you were on, and we need to make sure that we get you on a more regular basis, by the way. But you have so much wisdom to share with us. You were like the hardcore of the hardcore, pretty much leftists, and then you had kind of some things that opened your eyes. But I mean, that is, it's amazing to see, and it gives everybody, I think, hope that there's people like you, because I think a lot of parents are dealing with that, and it's not just some leftist ideology. Again, it's addiction, it's
Yeah.
whatever it is, criminality.
And
prayer
sometimes
work.
the cult stuff is like addiction. It's an addictive belief system. Sometimes it's like that. I still I just talked to a mom whose son disowned her and other Trump voting family just now, like
Mhm.
late to do it, right? Just now she's going through this and
Mhm.
trying to figure out what it is and where it came from. And just in conversations with her, it's like a lot of it is like addiction. And sometimes that person has to hit a rock bottom with what like they're isolating themselves like people in addiction do. And sometimes it just takes them hitting their own personal rock bottom to start to rethink things.
No, I agree completely. Let's see. Dirtbike says, I hate to even mention it, but that Islamic Center has a long history. I know, and I talked about this last night.
It's true.
Too. There's at least 2 of the 9/11 hijackers that were associated with that. There's a lot of other things going on with that. I don't know if this is related or not. It doesn't seem to be. We don't have any evidence of that. So take that for what it is.
The something that's a little bit more recent was so part of the San Diego Union Tribune, which is the big paper here. The imam's wife was a contributor, like a community contributor, that she would do op-eds, and she was asked to step down. This was probably about 7 years ago for some anti-Semitic things that she posted on her Facebook. So there's yes, it's fair. Well, I want to be an honest broker. It's fair to bring it up. This Islamic Center has been controversial.
Yeah. And look, I've said this 100 times on this channel. Look, I do not feel like that Islam is compatible with Western society. I will say that. That being said, what I don't think is the answer is, using violence. I think we need to talk to people. We need to make people that are aware of what's going on with all that, and really what it comes down to. But, violence isn't the answer, and it's not how we get anything done. And, these people, and in this instance, one of these shooters is referencing all of these other active shooters, most of which are dead by now. Right?
Yeah.
And like, what did they accomplish? Like, you can't see that they accomplished nothing. All they did was throw their life away. They didn't get anything big done. If you're really concerned about these types of things, and I don't care what side of the aisle you're on politically, religiously, or anything else, like you have some good examples of people being individuals that really make change happen across America. Charlie Kirk is one of them. I mean, one of the biggest influence while he was alive and after his death. He's, the things that he's accomplished are still happening. TPUSA is still a huge political force. And I know people don't want that to be, but it is. Gray Hughes in the chat, everybody. I actually believe Trump derangement syndrome should be an actually diagnosed condition, like in DSM. I don't disagree with you.
Let's add it to the DSM-5 or DSM-6.
What about
edition.
Israel derangement syndrome? That's all I hear about from some people.
Oh, I said that for the very first time today.
Or Erica derangement syndrome.
Yes.
Like those are real psychological maladies. And you're
there
talking
are
about
other countries in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah. That actually we can point to definitely bigger problems that we have with them. You were talking about Jordan Peterson. I mean, what a time to be missing his voice.
We could so benefit from it.
Yeah.
The past year. But he's inspired so many people, and there are a lot of those people out talking now. And you just have to look at a person. There's so many influencers and channels and stuff nowadays. When I feel like when podcast alternative media first started coming up, it was more about it was a reaction to the propaganda and the lies we were being fed on mainstream media. And
Yes.
now it's so thick with people, and it has become a career for some people to podcast, where it's like, this is what to where there's an incentive to then do it as a career, right? So you get so many people doing it that there's so many people now who are quote unquote I don't know, like thought leaders or however they market themselves, and they've become like a lot like the mainstream media. Some of the same problems, like propaganda, lies, clickbait, things to get, it used to be that mainstream media was just sort of talking heads on a panel, all giving like a soundbite, like you've got 2 minutes to get your point, and arguing with each other. And the podcasts were more like long form conversations that people were having that were nuanced and trying to understand each other better and have dialogue. And now I feel like a lot of this new media space has become just like the mainstream media, where it's these, shorts have become huge. And then on X, for example, a lot of X is just dunking. It's just people dunking on it's like that 2 minute dopamine hit, or or the 1 second, the one line hit.
Though I do dunk on Gavin Newsom.
I get it.
Okay, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I live in California.
I get a dunk one too. Oh, and girl, I hope that Spencer Pratt wins. No, but I'm just saying, there's a place for that. There's
I get what you're saying. There's people that are just constantly negative, and that's
It's
I'm just constantly negative about Gavin Newsom.
No, well, he deserves it.
Yeah.
We pray for him. We pray for Gavin Newsom.
It's just the new media space. My whole point with that is, people have to be just as discerning as we were about, like, if you didn't trust the mainstream media and you didn't trust the talking heads, and you started to wake up and realize, oh, they're programming me to believe certain things or have certain, the same thing is happening with influencers. If all you did was listen to the most popular podcasters, you would think that, like Theo Vaughn said, all of our budget goes to Israel. No, it's less than 1% of our budget goes to Israel. Like, there's certain things like that people are picking up, just like they picked up lies from the woke left. Kind of like, if a lot of people believe that cops are shooting unarmed Black people every day, that it's this epidemic. And similarly, people are believing these things like, oh, all of our money goes to Israel. And I'm like,
great analogy.
Does it? Go look that up, So
yeah, and that's something I talked a little bit about in our members only with, again, folks, we had a members only earlier, and those are always great discussions. But that's the problem with this, is like, we know the phrase, if you're explaining, you're losing. And that's what's convenient about these tropes and these talking points, is like, we send all our money to Israel. Well, that's quick, that's easy, that gets shared right away. As the saying goes, the truth a lie goes around the world before the truth even has a chance to put his shoes on. And then like the explanation of that takes longer. It's not as fun. It's not as shareable. It's not as consumable. So combating these lies takes 3 to 10 times more work. And
Yes.
that's just the truth. So, you know, that's why it's so important that when you all see these lies, like we've got as Christians, especially, but it's just people that care about the truth. You've got to stand up. You got to combat these things right off the bat. We can't let these little lies turn into big lies. The only way to combat these things is with a full force of the truth. I mean, that's what you got to do. That's the antidote every single time. Just sitting back and letting it go, I don't think does anything for us. BX spoke about this. She pinned at the top of Gary's Rumble channel. The accelerationist ideology is very frightening. Yeah, and we need to have BX back on. She is kind of a expert on these organizations like 764 Network, 09A. And these are accelerationist groups that are nihilistic, and they're also big into trafficking and exploiting children. Like, and here's the thing: like some of these groups, I don't even know. And by the way, the founder of 764 actually converted to Islam. Take that for what you will. I'm not even sure. I think some of these groups are being used by larger entities, whether that's the CCP, whether that's Russia, Iran, or whatever else. I think these groups can be created and very quickly and be unwitting actors in a lot of these different things, because these are people that are vulnerable to brainwashing, to psychological influence and manipulation. These are people that they're targeting that are specifically meant that they can easily radicalize and weaponize. And whether it's directing them at a specific target, like potentially happened with Donald Trump and Tyler or Thomas Crooks, and or Charlie Kirk and Tyler Robinson, or something like this. I think there's just too much. There are definitely entities out there that are going to exploit these types of things time and time again, and we need to be aware of that. Who stays on hold with 911 for 90 minutes? I mean, I would have either called back multiple times or gotten in my car and driven to the police station at that point. I hear you. I don't know.
It's a fair point.
Yeah. It's terrifying to see what's happening in our world. The impact of our social media is immense. Terrifying what is happening to people's minds. I agree. CJ Correnti gifted 10 Paramount Tactical members. Thank you very much. Not blaming Fuentes directly, but the profile of these boys, anti-everything, racist, incel, accelerationist mentally, is a lot of what Fuentes pushes. Both of you, like, why do you, I know we talked about it a little bit, but like, why do you think there's so many people that are drawn to this anti-Semitic ideology, this look, I believe, I would even kind of, I don't know, describe myself as like a Christian nationalist. You know, I believe in putting our country first. I'm a Christian. That doesn't mean that, you know, I think I'm superior than anybody else or whatever else, but I do think that, like, that's how I would kind of describe myself. And I know people will take that and misconstrue it, but why do you think so many people are so easily influenced by this stuff?
I'll let Amy go first because I've.
Nothing good happens in isolation. And again, I had conversations with the actual mother of Kane Clark, and he went in, and I'm not saying online school is bad, but in my opinion, it was not the best decision or choice for this child, given what we know now. So
Yeah.
here in California, schools were closed down for nearly 2 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay. And so he never went back after schools were reopened. And I just think nothing good happens in isolation.
I agree. And look,
And I
there's a
think
lot
we need to look at that.
No, I agree. And there's a lot of people that believe that the COVID-19 virus was intentionally put upon Western society. And regardless if you believe that or not, what I do know is that the moment that the CCP and other countries saw that the United States was isolating people and children the way that it was, and by the way, that's really where TikTok got super popular during that time.
Mm-hmm.
We had kids in isolation on devices for 18 plus hours a day. You better believe that they were exploiting that time. They understood it. They knew how to utilize that time. They knew what was happening, and like it damaged kids, the isolation itself, but also what they were consuming while they were isolated, damaged a generation of Americans, possibly beyond repair. I mean, uh, understand this stuff happens. Our adversaries are extremely smart. They know exactly where the mentality of the American people are, the vulnerabilities of the American people are, and you are constantly being exploited, whether you realize it or not. And you got to be aware of that and what's going on. And it's not just foreign adversaries; it's also political adversaries. That's why these guys like George Soros and everything else, they have huge think tanks that are constantly analyzing and figuring out ways to. And then never mind the fact that we have social media, YouTube. Look, these are extreme leftist organizations that I think are kind of putting all their eggs in the CCP basket, to be quite frank with you. I don't think these are companies that are extremely patriotic. I think they think, like most leftists, that we deserve to be knocked down into mediocrity and that the fundamental founding of the United States was evil. And that's their ideology. That's what I think. Go ahead, Keri.
I think underlying the Nick Fuentes audience, like all of these different demoralizing cults online, whether they're leftists or they are woke right or whatever you want to call them, one thing that unites all of them, aside from being based around this identity politics, identity grievance, collectivism, is that underneath it all is resentment. They prey on resentment and they grow resentment in people. And it makes me think of one of the first things that started to snap me out of the woke left cult. There were several things, but one of them was listening to Jordan Peterson's lecture from the 80s. And I recommend this to everyone all the time. You can still find it on YouTube. It was Jordan Peterson's Tragedy versus Evil. And it was from the 1980s. And I know he's delivered that talk since then. He's updated it, but it was about the book of Genesis. And I was not keep in mind, I was not a Christian at the time. I was on the left. And he was talking about how even if you're not a believer, even if you're not a Christian, that the story of Cain and Abel is a great parable. And it's a great allegory for two different ways of existing in the world, being in the world. And one of those ways, Cain's way, is resentment. And, Cain is he blames other people for his he blames his brother for his problems. He doesn't make sacrifices that are pleasing to the Lord. For whatever reason, the Lord's not pleased with the sacrifices he's making, tells him to do better, and he blames him on his brother, and he's not grateful, and why not me kind of mentality.
And one of the shooters' name was Cain. By the way,
I noticed this Cain and Caleb, which is very close to Cain and Abel. I was just thinking about it. But see, Abel's path in the Bible is the opposite. Abel is grateful for what God gives him. He makes sacrifices that are pleasing to the Lord. And so Jordan Peterson was kind of talking about these two different modes of being. And it got in I started thinking about like every choice that we make so many choices every day. And I started thinking about all those choices. Is this a choice of like Cain? Like, am I reacting out of resentment and why not me? Or am I reacting like Abel with gratitude and thankfulness for what I have? And it might sound simplistic to someone listening, but that lecture helped change my whole way of thinking and got me out of that resentment narrative. And these guys, everything in their manifesto is resentment. It's why not me? I can't get a woman. I'm short. I'll never have anything. Boomers ruined everything. The Jews ruined everything. I have no agency whatsoever. It's not even worth applying myself. Just total arrogance, resentment, entitlement, nihilism, a belief in nothing. Like that is that Cain way that Peterson talked about. And what does it lead you to? Ultimately, murderous resentment, whether you act on the murderous resentment or not, but it leads you to that just full of darkness. So
Abel was the first Jew. Like, it's the Jews' fault.
And Cain, the world's first murderer.
Yeah.
And this is something like it's so important, and it almost is cliche at this point, but having a positive mental attitude and really sitting around and thinking hard about all the blessings you have in life is so important. Like we get so pissed off at the dumbest things, and it's like next thing you know, we're depressed and we're worried. Like when you get to that point, it's so important to like sit around like, okay, look, I'm going to my family's not dying. Wherever your circumstances are, like the blessings so much more outweigh the problems that you have. But yet it takes us a while to sit around and really appreciate, like our grievances come to mind right away. Like, and that's what's always forefront of mind. We don't sit and think about, you know what? I got a beautiful wife. I have a wonderful wife. My wife's the best. My kids are wonderful. They're healthy. Like, nobody here in my household has cancer. I know there's people suffering from that, but guess what? Even if that's the case, it's like, you know what? You still have time with them. Like, looking for the positives can completely change your point of view. But when all you do is sit around and worry about grievances, it is a destructive, satanic force, and you are not going to go anywhere. So
I'm going to say one last thing, Gary. Even neuroscientists agree with you. So you don't have to be a Christian to practice gratitude, because neuroscientists say it rewires our brains to write down and think about what we're grateful for.
Oh, super important.
And it's biblical too, about neuropathways, the renewing of your mind.
Yes.
Creating those neuropathways.
Yeah.
Renewing of your mind.
It trains you to focus on the positive. It really does. And that's lots of studies on that as well. Like, this is what successful people do. They don't sit around and woe is me. The Jew is a cop-out, scapegoating a whole group of people and blaming them for all the world's problems is reckless, harmful, and inaccurate. Couldn't agree more.
So let me just tell you really quick too, it's part of my testimony. My mom was a secretary. My dad worked at FedMart, which was like Walmart in the 1970s. He was the guy behind the jewelry and camera counter. We were totally working class. The whole idea that, but we were not wealthy, we were working class. For somebody to think that because we were Jewish, that we were like controlling the world. I'm older than both of you, and I just want to tell you that life wasn't always like this. We didn't know every anti-Semitic, anti-Black thought in somebody's mind. People kept it to themselves, okay?
Yeah.
But it's because of the internet that we know now.
Well, and so much changed it. Like, the racial divide, and I don't want to go down this path, but it's worth noting. Like, growing up, I was born in 1980. So, growing up, like, there was no racial tension that I saw in school and friends and high school. I went to a large high school and played sports, and like, there was none of this. Like, it got so much worse after Obama. And where I first started seeing that, it was like, if it was the first thing that was said, if you were against Obamacare, it's like, oh, it's because you're racist. But I digress. I don't want to. We could.
Well, identity politics made everything worse. Yes,
it really did. Tracy, thank you very much. We appreciate that. We got a new member, Mockingbird Lane. Thank you very much. Odorized ramblings. Were these kids ever on SSRIs? That's a great question. I don't have an answer to it. Amy, do you know?
It's a fair question. I'll tell you what. I've been trying to reach out to the mother. Like I said, I have Kane's mom's cell phone number. She hasn't texted me back, and I do hope that I get to have a deeper conversation with her and she can answer some of these questions. And if she does, I'd be happy to come back on your show.
Would love that. And just what a tragedy. Like, so many families are broken. Even talking about the Tyler Robinson case or any of these shooters, like, that kid's life is over now. And not only have we lost Charlie and the unbelievable negative impact of that, but also his parents. It's like, his parents know that and probably feel such responsibility that their son did something so egregious. So, and I'm sure Kane and Caleb's parents feel the same way. It's just a tragedy all the way around. My kids are young, but we don't talk a lot of politics around them. We want them to be kids, and they enjoy kid things. Just watch, guide them. I agree. Like, you don't want to be pushing politics down a kid's throat when they're 3. Although I will say,
my poor kids.
Yeah, like
it's the opposite in my house.
If I can find this, and I hope I can.
But I agree with the commenter. I mean, kids don't need to.
I have a video going back to probably 2015 of Noah, and he was just a couple years old at the time. It was probably 2016. He was probably 2, but he was sitting in the back seat. And I said, Noah, who do you want who do you want to win? You want Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton? He was like, Donald Trump. I was like, no, I think Hillary Clinton's going to win. He's like, no, I want Donald Trump. So, and we went to a rally in DC when they were really young, and they had fun with it too. So, but I hear what you're saying, and I think you're correct. I mean, they're not. All you're doing is pushing your beliefs on them, which again, I don't necessarily see wrong, but definitely those conversations need to be had at more length when they're older. Satan is the father of lies. Candace is the mother of lies. God is the Alpha and Omega. He rules all. Jesus is the way. I couldn't.
Amen.
Amen.
And I am about sick and tired of seeing the worst human beings have Christ as King in their bios. I just
Okay,
want to.
thank you for bringing it up. Is Christ King? He absolutely is. But when I mention, again, as part of my testimony, or in the anti-Semitic comments start, there's a group of people that use Christ as King as a weapon.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a
And
bad.
they are smearing. I think part of it is purposeful to smear Christians, but also they're trying to smear the name of Christ when they do that. By their bad fruits, by their bad behavior, get people to associate them with Christianity. They've also specifically decided to squat on the phrase Christian nationalism, which is why you mentioned earlier, Gary, you're like, well, technically I'm a nationalist and I am a Christian, but they have done their best to stink up that phrase and to make it mean something else. It's kind of like
And by the way,
Black
he's
Lives
King
Matter.
of Kings.
He
He's
is
not
King
just
of Kings.
King, he's King of
Yes.
Kings, Lord of Lords. So when I see like the Christ is King thing, and it's directed at Ben Shapiro. And I'm like, wow. I'm like, somewhere maybe behind that person, posting Christ as King, as a weapon to Ben Shapiro. I actually prefer the Christians that have these sit down podcasts and they share their testimonies and they share biblical truth with Ben. And Ben is listening.
Yes.
He's an Orthodox Jew. He doesn't have to have Bible believing Christians on. I personally believe Ben Shapiro is going to accept Christ, but he's not going to accept it because somebody posted Christ as King.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
you kill the Jews. That's not going to work either.
Barack Obama?
There we go.
Barack Obama?
I like Donald Trump.
What about Hillary Clinton? You like Hillary Clinton?
No. I said I like Donald Trump.
Oh, okay.
Aw.
That's adorable.
Oh, if we could go back to those days. He's much older now. Webin, JP Sears, Fishback, leading conference crisis King America
Yes.
after Trump. I didn't know this comment was coming up. All the speakers believe in replacement theory, anti-Jews. Couldn't agree more.
Can I speak to that? Webin is in my backyard. He moved to Georgetown, Texas from California to escape church discipline, where he had hid the fact that he was sleeping with a parishioner for 8 months. He remade himself from a kind of woke left pastor into a woke right pastor. And now, as I think one of the Babylon Bee guys earlier today pointed out, that fourth page of the manifesto about like, it's the Jews is sort of indistinguishable from any typical Joel Webin post. And so, yeah, I have a lot of thoughts about that. He's one of the ones I would say he masquerades as a Christian and as a pastor. And if you have especially young men like sons who are listening to him, I would say that is a red flag that they're listening to him.
Yeah, I agree. The base Judean, Amy, you are still of the tribes of Judah. Jews can be any faith. If a Sioux becomes a Buddhist, they're still Sioux. Cheers from JBLE on my AT for U.S. Army Reserves.
Okay. So I've got to confuse the heck out of everybody now. Can I tell a really quick personal story?
Of course.
So I was adopted. I was born in 1968, and my biological mother and biological father, they met in the Army.
Oh, wow.
Right. So at Summer of Love, Aquarius time. Okay. I was a love child. They were not married. Neither one of them were Jewish. But my biological mother gave me up to a Jewish family services adoption agency. And I was adopted into a Jewish family. My whole entire life, I was told that my biological mother was Jewish, but my biological father was not.
Hmm.
Again, I've shared that I'm a licensed private investigator, and you're never allowed to find out your real parents' names. I was born in Pennsylvania. I worked with the adoption agency, and I was able to pay them money, which is ridiculous, to go look for them. And they found them. And I didn't find out until I was in my 40s that I was quote unquote not genetically Jewish. So I'm like a reverse Moses, you guys.
What you're saying,
I was given away to the Jews. And I was raised Jewish. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam. Okay.
well, what
And
you're
then
saying,
I
Amy,
became a Christian in my 30s. So
what you're saying cannot be true, because I've heard people tell me on the internet that Jews hate the goyim. All right, and there's no way that they would.
So
have
I
taken
hate
a goyim
myself.
baby. It's so crazy.
Yeah, I just really wanted to blow everybody's mind there.
No, that's a cool story. Seriously. Gary and Keri, I really miss Rush Limbaugh. His explanations always calmed my fears, but made me think and move forward. That's right. Like, you know, whether it's Charlie Kirk, Rush Limbaugh, and many other solid voices out there, the thing that they have in common is it's always a positive message, right? It's always like, hey, here's a problem, but let me give you a solution. And the solution makes sense. You know, letting the Democrats win, if you don't believe in their ideology, isn't a sound solution. It's the height of idiocy, to be quite frank. It's so depressing. My daughter won't speak to me because I support Trump. She told me she hated my guts and wants nothing to do with me to my face. She never wished me happy Mother's Day. My heart hurts. I'm sorry that you're going through that, Tammy.
I am so sorry.
Yeah.
And yeah, and just what I said before, just keep your faith and be loving and keep praying for her, because you don't know God's timing. And I'm just sorry that you're in this, with, you know, like the season, hopefully just a season of this kind of separation. But
Yeah.
I'm very sorry.
And not a comparison or anything, but my own brother, he hates Trump with the white hot burning passion. And he knew that I supported Trump. But you know what broke our relationship and he stopped speaking to me? It was over masks during
Wow.
COVID. My husband is legally deaf. So under the California mask mandate, those who are legally deaf, they were exempt from masks. We literally had a physician's note. And I spoke out about that, how it was important that he was able to read our lips.
Mm-hmm.
He became legally deaf later in life, so he didn't know American Sign Language. But to the moms that have been commenting that their family members have done this to them over Trump, I just want to let you know I'm actually in that same situation with my brother. And so, yeah, again, it's not my child, but my heart goes out to you.
Yeah, that's rough. Keri, will you please promote Josh Slocum to the audience? I learned about him, about the dark personality types from your show. I hope Gary can get him on. Sell me on Josh Slocum.
You guys should talk. I was just on a stream with him last night. Josh Slocum is the host of Disaffected, and he looks at woke ideology specifically through the lens of cluster B personality disorder.
Ooh.
And so he kind of talks about how ideology itself can have cluster B personality disorder traits. I mean, a lot of the cluster B traits, which are dishonesty, narcissism, splitting, you know, black or white thinking, like you see a lot of that in woke ideology. And so he would be a great person. I thought of this last night, that you should talk to him. What a great comment to come up. So yeah, I don't know if he would talk about Miss Owens. I think he's steer clear. He usually steers clear of talking.
Not, like, I was
okay.
So...
He has said, I think she obviously was one of the greatest illustrations, unfortunately, of cluster B out there right now, but I'm not going to talk about her.
I enjoy not talking. Any opportunity to not talk about Miss Owens is a great opportunity. So,
but he can explain those disorders.
Yeah, no, that's great. I think a lot of people do. Bees in the Trap says nobody ever talks about the psych meds involved in these events. They do, and I think it definitely plays a role. There has been, I don't know if they're actual clinical studies, but there's at least been people taking notes that just about every single of these homicidal shooters also happen to be on some sort of psych meds. I think it's a component of this. I mean, when you take these meds, like one of the top things that they have warnings on is like you could become suicidal. Like, I don't understand it. And of course, what it is, we're dealing with brain chemistry, right? So it's a grab bag. And I've seen this with people in my family where it's like, oh yeah, I'm feeling worse because they haven't got my meds right, and they try 47 different meds, and they're still not happy. It seems to be a very terrible option. And again, I know that conversely, and to be fair, there are people out there that have had massive relief because of psych meds, SSRIs and others. So I don't know.
It's going to be interesting to see how that comes into play with the Rob Reiner. Because there's, there were reports that his son, the medication had just been changed. And, whether or not that had something to do with it, but yeah,
couldn't agree more.
Yes.
I mean, at the end of the day, with this manifesto, folks, admittedly, we just scratched barely scratched the surface. There's a lot more to talk about there. Real quick, Keri, if you will, as we're kind of shutting this thing down, talk to people about what they can possibly do to prevent this from happening to their kids. If they see this type of negative influence taking place, what should they do? Whatever you got on that topic.
Well, as I mentioned, I've been reading a lot lately, a lot of studies about the effect of screens on the brain, on developing brains, and it's related to some of the stuff I do offline. I'm becoming of the opinion that if you're able to, you should severely restrict your child's screen use, or you should monitor it at the very least, or do what is now considered radical and crazy and maybe don't allow them to have devices until they're 16 or 18, until they're older. That I would recommend that right out the gate. The other is like I said, if they are online, you need to be aware of the sites they're going to and where they're spending time. You have to become like a little police officer. Unfortunately, if you give them devices, you need to know about hidden apps and things where they can communicate with people that look like different things. Some that look like a camera when it's really a file folder where you can hide documents or communications. Like, you have to know about those things. And then above all, I would say, if you are a believer, because I do talk to believers who, as I mentioned before, don't have a church community. They don't have people in their child's life to look up to, like real world examples of positive, of masculinity, of femininity, of older, wiser people who can give them counsel and advice, who they can look up to, like a father figure or a grandfather figure. If maybe they don't have a positive one in their life, you need to have that. And so don't give up on looking for a positive church community. This is like real world practical advice I would give a friend. Keep looking for that church that's a Bible believing church where you will have a network of people around you, like a family of people around you for your kids to spend time with, because your kids are going to become, what's that saying about like you're an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with? Your kids are going to become some reflection of the people they have spent the most time with. And so you want to have strong, wise people in their life.
Yeah. And, I know there's a lot of parents out there right now saying, oh, and I hear this all the time, like, what about their privacy? Talk a little bit about that. The people are like worried about their kids' privacy. I know what I think about it, but I'd like to hear.
They're children. You're an adult. Somehow, Gary, we entered this age of like, we're no longer an adult authority anymore. And you can even see this in the classroom where it's like, oh, children are going to teach children. The desks aren't going to face the front and face the teacher. The adult's not an authority. Nobody's an authority. Kids learn from each other, kind of thing. This is ridiculous. They're children. They don't have privacy when they're kids. We protect children. We have always, until very recently, acknowledged that children are different than adults and they need protecting from groomers and outsiders in the world and evil, and they also need protecting from themselves. We don't allow them to vote. We don't allow them to drive cars. We don't allow them to smoke cigarettes or drink alcohol or have sex or get tattoos or get piercings. And yet suddenly in the past decade, under woke ideology, we decided that kids are somehow able to consent to a whole host of things that we had previously said they're not able to, and that they get to choose what their biological sex is, like make it up, and then they get to consent to surgery and mutilations and all all of this stuff is related, and it's an abdication of power and authority by the adult.
Yes.
And if you are an adult and you've chosen to have a child, it is the biggest blessing you could have, and it comes with the biggest responsibility. You have this little image bearer, this human being and that you're responsible for, and to abdicate that and say, I'm going to let the internet raise them and I'm going to give them ultimate freedom, like the freedom an adult enjoys when they're a child. We don't say things like, well, children are going to figure things out, so don't lock up the poison in the house. Let them find the poison and figure it out for themselves. No, we lock the poison up.
I mean, that is the perfect analogy for this. Is like, are you going to just let them find and consume the poison on the internet? That's what you're worried about, their privacy? Like,
right?
Kids don't have privacy. They're kids and they're dumb.
And predators don't believe in your kids' privacy.
They sure don't. They sure don't. Nope. I couldn't agree more. Amy, give us some, whether it's about the case, words of wisdom, whatever you like to share with the viewers out there.
Well, everything that Keri said, I just want to affirm everything she said. And like I said, I'm a licensed private investigator. I just want to give parents permission to be a private investigator to your kids.
Yes.
That's what I'm leading with.
They're not always that wise, but man, they're wily. They'll come up with all kinds of ways to trick you and deceive you so they can hide crazy things. And, it happens out there. Well, listen, look, the best thing about all of this tonight is I was going into this a little like, oh, this is going to be dark. And I think we were able to turn it around and make some positives out of it. I think it was both because of both of you. So I thank you guys so much for coming on the show, sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with everybody out there. Hopefully people out there got some positives out of this as well. Like, we need to be aware of the negatives, but the fact is there's hope, right? We can prevent this stuff. And even like what you were talking about, Keri, like getting kids into church, it's a prevention with that, where this will never be an issue. Like waiting for all these problems to arise, still getting them in the church is probably the right answer. But you want to prevent that. You want them to have a good foundation, a moral foundation, a spiritual foundation. Like that is so important. And even when I was a kid, like I was forced to go to church. My parents were UPC, they were United Pentecostal. Like we went to church like 5 days a week, and I'm not even kidding. And I went to the school at the church. So a lot of this stuff was force fed down my throat, and I didn't appreciate it then. But looking back, I realize the positive impacts of those people around me, being around the Word of God all the time, the impact that it had on me much later on. And, now I'm thankful for it. And your kids will be thankful for it too. So
even if they stray, they will have something to come back to if they choose to, like the prodigal son.
I strayed as far as you could possibly stray, just about. So you're absolutely right. Well, ladies, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you guys so much. All the viewers out there, thank you so much for your support. Thank you for watching. Make sure you like, share this stuff. Make sure you go follow both of these ladies. All of their information is down in the description below. Support the people that are worth supporting, and these ladies are for sure. You ladies don't go anywhere, but for everybody else, thank you for tuning in, and stay armed, stay ready. We'll talk to you soon.